Jim, welcome to the podcast, man. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on board, dude.
Thank you very much, Matt. I appreciate you having me.
No,
I hope that things are going well there.
Yeah, surviving. Still trying to kind of make do with what we can with all this COVID stuff. So, unfortunately, I don't have access to quite the beautiful gym garage setup that you have, but I'm making do with my power rack and whatever I've got in the back garden. So, yeah, it's not doing too bad, man. Not doing too bad at all.
Good.
So it's
we've been very lucky. Because the garage gym is, I work with the high school football team. I live in a very small town, 10,000 people, and it's very isolated from other parts. So we have, for example, where I live, and then there's about 6,000 cornfields, and then another another city. So it's small towns. Things operate a little differently here. And there we go. And so, to make a long story short, we've been defying the COVID bullshit, and the football team comes here.
Sweet.
And,
okay.
So it's been awesome. Obviously, not every single player, and but we have groups and stuff. So it's been awesome.
So how are you running that? Are you running that just like kind of like your traditional gym room sessions that you would be doing, bringing in kind of like a couple of guys at a time, hitting a session, and then doing the next group?
We just have 10 guys at a time, and we just separate them. So they'll do some prowler or sled work outside, then they'll switch. And then other days we have one group benches while the other group squats or deadlifts, and then they'll switch, stuff like that. So we have a pretty good group going. Very obviously dedicated because we come in 5 days a week. But it's been awesome having this resource here. You know, of course, it was done selfishly, building the garage gym. But in the end, it's actually helped the community quite a bit, you know, with the football team and stuff. And I know it doesn't really make sense to you because you're, you know, in the UK, but football in America is massive. It's funny because during all this quarantine bullshit, by the way, it's not quarantine. You don't, sick people being held behind bars is tyranny. All right. There's a big difference. Quarantine is when you hold a sick person behind closed doors. Anyway, of course, everyone was thinking, well, we're going to have a football season, right? Well, do you know what pays for everything in the college arena?
What's that?
Football pays for everything.
Okay.
So you eliminate football, the whole fucking university's done. So of course they're going to have a football season, and miraculously, right when things are starting to take off, like, things are going to have to open up, right? So
it's convenient.
Yeah, So, and well, whatever, you know. The little rebel part in me still loved it to stick it to the fucking man who tells me what I can and can't do in my own goddamn house. So, you know, I'm 45 years old, and I told my wife, I'm like, I feel like I'm fucking 16 again. Fuck the man. They don't get to tell me what I can and can't do. And you know what's crazy? No one's sick. And everyone's healthier because they're in better shape. Crazy.
Everyone's moving more.
Yeah, imagine. And they're out in the sun. Man, I wonder if vitamin D has anything to do with health.
Oh, you might be onto something there, Jim.
Yeah.
I think we're onto something here. Yeah, it's interesting, man. You know, kind of talking about kind of like football and whatever. What a lot of people don't realize is, you know, especially a lot of those college guys, this is their like one big fucking shot. So to have this land when it's landing, like obviously you think about all of the guys that, you know, are much younger, that don't really have to worry about it. But for the guys that are in the limelight right now, you know, guys that are trialing for big teams, this is potentially life-changing, you know, especially if someone isn't in a fortunate position like you guys are, where you're like, okay, fuck, I can still hop down Jim's garage and we can still train. Like, the fact that you've then been able to do that, like, that's what I love about you, and that's what I love about, you know, all of you guys, is that it's such a part of your lifeblood that you will do everything and anything to keep it going. And, you know, it just goes to show that, you know, these guys are coming out the other side of it better off for you actually being a little bit selfish, and you have potentially then given them that opportunity back. What happens if someone gets drafted, they play in the NFL, they have an incredible life? It's like, fuck, man, if you didn't have this season now where you're doing that with them.
Yeah. Well,
That's interesting.
it goes well even beyond the practical of a guy getting bigger, stronger, faster, all that stuff. Yes, hold on one second. You gonna turn that off, babe? Okay. Uh, just the watching these kids come out of the bullshit quarantine, the camaraderie. They needed the human contact. Football is a different. Uh, it's a very physical, violent sport, and these kids are together 24 hours, not 24. I mean, 7 days a week. They're always together, basically. They've known each other since elementary school. Most of these kids, and males especially need that bond. They need that bond with a violent struggle. That's why war is so attractive to young men. They don't like the PTSD and they don't want to die and they don't want to see their friends die. But that's that camaraderie in a during a physical struggle that's what brings the guys together. And I watched these kids from the moment they came in. And remember, these guys are all great friends. They looked like they were just beaten down, like mentally. And then now they're like the amount of shit talking that's going on and the amount of just general happiness. So it goes well beyond, just getting ready for football and sports and getting strong and all that stuff. Mentally and physically, it's been amazing watching these kids. And, I've known these kids, since they've been freshmen, and most of these kids are going to be seniors and stuff. But it's just been a good thing. And the reason why I started coaching in the first place, well, there's a lot of reasons, but one was, we live in a very small town. There's not a lot of resources to be had, meaning there's not like a full-time strength coach. There's like all the families chip in. So
I love
that. I'm not one of those guys that wants to go down to the homeless shelter and, put food in a bowl. That's not who I am. Like my mom did that for like 20 years because she loves cooking but I needed to do something to help the community out. The only thing I can really do is, strength train. Yeah. And so I started volunteering, and it's given me more than I've given it. And the change in the community and the football team has been amazing. And we went from being, and it's not just me, but the first season I kind of started during the season, basically. We weren't very good, and we went to the playoffs every single year after it, and no one wants to play us anymore, and everyone hates us because we're just physical and we beat the crap out of people. So I'm very proud of the fact that we've developed a bunch of goddamn fucking fiends on the player. I love it.
Yeah,
I love that.
But it's like it's in your lifeblood, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? And I think that was probably set into you at like a young age. And I think, when that bug hits, man, it's with you for life.
Well, when I first started lifting, it was one, I have some friends that, when they saw Eddie Van Halen or something, or Jimi Hendrix or whoever, James Hetfield, they're like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah. But
I'm going to play that guitar, and then became great drummers or great guitarists or whatever. And I remember when I saw football and I saw like Arnold Schwarzenegger in the movies, I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to do that shit. Like at a very early age. And so, and I love football. Even now that I'm not part of it, of course, do I want to still play football? The honest answer is no, because I fucking can't walk half the day. But to be able to give these kids, still be part of it and to pass on something that's given me much more than I've given it, the training and the football and everything like that has been awesome. And the unfortunate thing is high school football, at least in the States, and especially I can't say it's especially in small towns, but it's not really, because whatever. The point being is high school football is like the last bastion where you have true camaraderie, and it's not just about the wins and the making money. Does that make sense? I mean, there's a bond, and once you go into college football, over the years, it's become more and more about the money. And there's nothing wrong with that, because the kids get great experiences and all this other stuff, but it just becomes a business. And this is like the last pure thing that we have, that we can involve young men in something that they were born to do. And men are born to do two things, and that's fucking fight. You know, that's just the way it goes. And I tell the kids all the time, I said, you know, you're here to you know, have a family, you know, to be, you know, as a man, you know, that's what your biological imperative is, to have a family, and you're supposed to be able to fight. And you know, obviously they've outlawed fighting pretty much. And I'm not you know, I don't want my kids going off and dying to war. So I'm like, here we go. This is what we're made to do. And, you know, people want to fight that all the time. Well, go ahead. You know, I have two young boys, and from the minute they saw like a T-Rex or a bulldozer, they're like, I don't know. Like, again, I don't know what the fuck that is, but no one's telling that T-Rex what to do. That's what I want.
I like that T-Rex. I want to be that T-Rex.
Yeah, no one tells it what to go to bed. Fuck yeah, I love that thing. So, yeah, it's really interesting watching my two sons grow up, because, I mean, of course, they're kind of in a testosterone-filled house and stuff like that. But, like, you know, if they want to play a sport, they can play, you know, whatever. If they want to do this and that, and we've always supported them. But holy shit, are they boys? I mean, boys are just... And we got, you know,
boys are boys.
Girls, yeah, girls in the neighborhood are just like, you know, want to play with. It's just a weird thing, you know. They can say all this stuff about the genders, but oh my god, like my son, the last 2 days he gave away a bunch of his old toys so he can buy more Nerf guns. You know,
that is just essentially the most boy thing to do.
Oh, you know, and we've. I know it's probably a taboo subject, but we have guns in the house, like real guns. And this is, you know, we have to, safety and stuff like that is huge with us with the guns. And it's a way of allowing, you know, getting him kind of used to it without obviously hurting himself, and understanding the importance of safety and stuff like that. So
yeah, for familiarizing yourself with the surroundings. And it's probably like, it's probably not too dissimilar. Like, I know you've talked about it before, like getting them to do stuff as well. You know, I think it's really interesting, you know, when you have the dynamic of someone being a strength coach, and then you have children, it's like, you know, everyone's like, so when are your kids lifting? Like, so when are your kids going to do the shit that you do? And it's like, well, okay, let's let them be kids for a while first, you know. Let's let them develop that athletic general preparedness before we kind of get them into anything.
We, how do I put this? Like, I'm never going to pressure my kids into strength training, because that takes a level of commitment and really want to, you know, as long
when
as
you say strength training, do you mean to like the level that you've taken it to, or just general strength training? Yeah.
Now, my oldest son plays football, and he's a quarterback, and he enjoys lifting only because it's going to help him play football.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. I'm like,
which is how most people get started, though, right?
Yeah. So, my youngest son, he is, hold on, 7. And so we just have minimums he has to do. Like, he's got to run a half mile, and he's got to do X amount of push-ups and squats. And it's very easy. And the only reason why we do that, besides obviously the physical thing, is to understand that it is important. And you have to set aside a small part of your day to do something physical. And obviously he's running around like a madman. He's in the pool. He's going here, going there, riding his bike like a madman. We got a kick-ass BMX bike. You know, he's flying around. But at the very least, it's part of his day. And it's not like, we don't run it like he's in Hell Week with the SEALs or something like that. You know, it's like, you know, we got to do this and that. And it's just expected now. Once, you know, when we first started, it was like 5 squats and 1 push-up and 1 sit-up a day. That was it.
I'm interested though, like, obviously your kids being young and seeing you do what you do, and again, go back to the fact that you've got that garage gym, like, they're around that and they see you doing that, so naturally, instinctually, kids want to replicate what their parents do, right? So, like, just them seeing you do that stuff, they're like, oh, okay, dad does this, and like, dad's cool, so I want to do this shit. Yeah,
and that's, you know, it goes 2 ways. Of course, you have the theory of the preacher's daughter, right? Instead of being one with Christ.
Yeah,
she's on her back. One
yeah.
with this. It's this. So that's why, we lead by example. We try to eat healthy. We, all that other stuff. And so you lead by example first. And if they want to mimic it, you help them out just enough. You don't have to, for example, with my oldest kid, I told him for the last 5-6 years, I said, I'm your dad first. I don't want to really be your coach. Does that make sense to you? Because I don't want to be, because when I coach, I'm a much different person than when I'm a dad.
And I think you have to be, and you have to be able to separate it. And I think that's super important for both you and him. Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't train my wife. Like, I don't even want to know what she does. I don't care. You go do whatever the fuck you want to do in the weight room. Like, it's not my business, because she's my wife. And so, I'm happy that she's doing well, and she, we talk about what she's doing and what I'm doing, but I don't want to be, I want to go upstairs and watch a movie with her and hang out and do.
It changes the dynamic, right?
Yeah. And so, here's my kid right here. Anyway, so that's, you walk a fine line with that. And my oldest son I'm still not the same coach as I am with him, as I'm with other kids.
Yeah. Do you think you're more?
But
do you think that you're like? It. Do you think that your attention to detail with him is kind of higher compared to like your kind of general preparedness that you would have with your other kids? It's like you know 100%, and you want him to be as perfect as he can be in those movement patterns, because you know 100% what's good and what's bad, and you want to reaffirm that good shit.
It's the only reason why it's like that, because I work with him one-on-one. When I work with the other kids, I got 50 kids and there's one of me. So I would have the same attention to detail if I was working with your son or someone else's son in a one-on-one situation. So I don't know. I understand what you're saying, but I don't think it really changes, because I still love what I do enough to, no matter who it is, because it's someone's son I'm working with.
Yeah.
It's always like there's a real world. There's like the internet world, and then there's a real world. The real world is when you're coaching, you have an S-load of people at one time.
Yeah.
And I got 2 pairs of eyes, and I got 50 kids, and teenage kids. There is, like, you could leave 5 kids alone in a weight room who all collectively bench maybe 200 pounds, and somehow they'll bend an $800 barbell. It's like, how did you guys muster up enough stupidity to bend this barbell? It's like when they're together, all their IQs are halved.
I think that's going back to the whole boys will be boys thing again.
Yeah,
dude.
It's just like, oh my God. So, so what I'm saying is, there is in the internet, they'll see some guy doing something in a team setting. Like, if I was coaching him, it would be different. It's like, dude, I also got 12 kids over here. I got 30 kids over here. I can't look at everything all the time. So there's always, it's, the good, better, best. Sometimes all you can do is get the good, because a lot of times where they start, for example, someone asked me a question if I used, I can't remember what he asked, but it was something like the so-and-so's power development style of training. Okay. And I said, dude, most of the kids I work with can't even do a push-up when they start. You think I give a fuck? Like what world do you live in where we need to be doing 8-foot depth jumps? These kids,
meanwhile, this is a person that probably squats just a bar, like bench presses, 10 kilos, like,
you're lucky. Like, I have kids who can't bench a barbell.
No, as in like the guy that's saying, why aren't you using this program? Like, it's all these fucking internet trolls that like they can't do half this shit themselves. Yeah. They just sit there and just wait for you to get triggered, and it's like, oh, for fuck's sake.
They're Dave Tate used to call them Yodas.
Yeah.
They only can lift weights with their minds. They can't actually do it.
Oh yeah, you go to the profile. It's like one picture of a motorbike. It's like a picture of their leathers. It's like the gym floor, a fucking protein shaker, and you're like, bro, there is not a single fucking photo of you even lifting in this.
Yeah,
and you're slagging off like, I don't know, Halfdor Bjornsson's like world record deadlift, and you're like, who the fuck are you? Like, what is Instagram anymore?
Yep. So it's people will ask me like, hey, what coaches do you follow, or who do you? And it's always like, well, the guys I talk to all the time don't have Instagram. And they're like, what do you mean? It's like, well, because they're doing shit, man. I mean, most of these people are working for a living, and most of them don't care. Most of them are like a little older than me anyway, because those are the people that I've learned from. They're the kind of guys like they know how to text their kids, and that's about it. I don't know any of this shit.
Even then, they sometimes send a text to the wrong person.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, why the fuck are you sending this?
Yeah. Why do you send that to me? I love you, Mom. It's your mom. So, but anyway, that's
it's interesting though, like with the whole kind of like the Instagram kind of versus reality as well, and like it does change the dynamic, and I think it's very interesting, saying what you're saying about kind of putting the 5 kids in a room together, and it's kind of they're trying to kind of do all of this crazy shit. It's like, we're so inundated with incredible feats of strength on a regular basis when we just literally open our phone and flick onto Instagram. Yep. It's so interesting, and I think that's really what kind of defines a lot of the shit you see now compared to the guys that you're talking about. You talk about those guys that are they are the fucking roots of the strength training world. And you're right in what you're saying, like they're so busy doing their own shit that they're not worried about anyone else's. And I think that's really interesting, as a coach being like, okay, so who do you follow? And you're like, man, I haven't got time to follow anyone else because I got this team, I got to worry about these clients. It's like, but that's true. And that's, I think what's brilliant about it is then your unique training style as a coach then has to come out, because we've got so many of these fucking cookie cutter bullshit coaches that are going, okay, I'm just going to take this conjugate program fucking Excel spreadsheet that I found online. I'm going to change the exercises up and I'm going to sell it for, $20 a head for an ebook. And you're like, oh, fuck, man. Like, it's so easy to do now, but you couldn't do that back in the day. You had to know Dave Tate. You had to go to this gym. You had to speak to that guy. You had to go out and buy your first set of resistance bands and start using it. Like, it's a different game now, right? Like, the whole game has changed.
It's changed. And the weird, I want to say lucky, but there is a certain amount of luck in it. When like how I met Dave was I was working at University of Kentucky, and he had come in as a consultant, and I had already known of Dave Tate and Louis Simmons and all that stuff, and we struck up a friendship. And what's the craziest thing is when I first met Dave, and of course we kind of hit it off a little bit because we're obviously we have similar interests and stuff like that. But the thing that I always tell people about how I got started was when he found out that I wrote some article, like I was an English major and I had done some writing. He asked me, he's like, well, do you want to write for the Elite? And at that point, I had already written like 30 articles because I didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew I wanted to write stuff. And I was like, dude, I got them right now. And I was prepared for that opportunity years prior to actually meeting Dave. And, I took advantage of that opportunity. If I had just sat back and waited for the, maybe someone will contact me and all this other stuff. So I was able to take advantage of that. And even the popularity of Elite FTS and some of the stuff I've done was all done out of a very grassroots organization. We didn't have a big plan. Dave had a business plan, but we're just like, we're just going to answer a shitload of questions every day and on the Q&A.
Do you know what's so funny is that you guys were doing like the fucking 2020 social media strategy, but you were doing it like fucking 25, 30 years before it even happened, man. Like, you know, you're talking about those Q&As, like just over-delivering, and then when you guys finally do put out a book, you put out the 531 manual or whatever, everyone's like, man, Jim spent so much fucking time with me. Like, I believe this guy, and then all of a sudden, oh, he's got this book. Okay, I'm going to buy that because I want to see what it's about.
And it was, and, you know, Dave will back me up because Dave knows I'm like the worst business guy in the world. That's probably why I don't work there anymore. But
shit.
It was really done just because Dave and I can tell you how many times we traveled for seminars, and I'm telling we got paid nothing. We got our airfare, you know, we got that in our room, and I think we charged like maybe $100 to $150 for 2 days, like 2 full days of stuff. And that was 8 hours on Saturday and like 6 hours or 5 hours on Sunday.
But I bet if you didn't get paid, you'd even still have fucking done it.
If they would have just paid my room and, you know, my airfare and stuff and room, I loved it. I loved doing that. And plus, you know, the number one thing that I look back now is all the stupid shit Dave and I dealt with and all the stories we had together. You know, in the worst fucking hotels, you know, and the horrible plane rides, and just one thing, the people we meet some of them were so effing weird. You know, you're like, holy shit, dude, this is like, we're in the middle of a cornfield with like in a barn. It's like, I don't even know if we're going to die here. And so that's the stuff that I most remember. It's but I was, you know, very lucky, and Dave gave me my first shot. And Louis Simmons was terrific to me. That guy has, you know, for whatever, you know, people see him and all the contributions he made and all this other stuff. There's 2 things I think people need to know about Lou. Is one, he is one of the funniest, most personable people you've ever met in your life. If you went out to dinner with him and like you and your parents and him, everyone would be rolling. He is a tremendous individual. And number 2, no one knows how much he's given people, and that's not just meaning in information. I've seen him give people money that needed money. Anything that the person needed, he'd take care of if they needed it. I mean, anything. And, you know, paying rent, paying for any of the gear that they need, paying entry forms. I mean, that gym that, you know, Westside was all free. You just showed up and he took care of everything, all the equipment. So, you know, that's part of the, you know, when we gave back, it was just continuing all the stuff. And that's what I'm doing with the school. Oh, hold on here. Oops. Cool. And, you know, just what I'm doing with the school is me trying to give back just what Lou and Dave did for me.
I love that. And it's so crazy as well. Cause you know, you think about it and kind of you paying it forward. And again, it kind of goes back to that thing is that as a coach, I don't even think half the time, you know, you're necessarily aware of the impact that you're then going to have on people's lives. So like for a background, so I played rugby all of my life. I played to a high standard. I was in a professional academy for 5 years, trialed for the national team twice, but tore my PCL like 5 months away from my final trial. So got dropped by my academy overnight, like life changed like in an instant. So it's just like, okay, you know, shit happens, you know, there's nothing you can really do about it. But the impact that strength training, and dude, like I can still remember like to this day my first ever strength training session in my professional academy, walking into that gym, and it's like that shit shapes you for the rest of your life. So what you're doing when you're paying it forward and you're kind of bringing that everything that you were then given, you know, by Louis, by Dave, and then passing that on, you just touch so many fucking people's lives. Like you save people's lives, you change people's lives, you stop people from doing stupid shit. I mean, people are always going to do stupid shit, but people don't understand that the gym is, and training is so much more than just the gym and training.
Yes. Well, you know, early on, like very early on in my life, I had a guy that took me under his wing. I've written about him numerous times. I did a big article on him. And, you know, that was at, I don't know, eighth grade maybe. So that would be 13, I guess, 13 years old. And he's the one that taught me everything as far as training. And I was with him all through high school. He was a teacher and a coach. And so he would, his name is Darren. I've written a bunch of articles about him. But I always liked the best story about Darren was I first started training when I was in 8th grade, so the year prior to my first year of high school. And Darren would always be in the weight room, and he'd be doing all this, doing cleans and squats and push press and jumping on boxes and stuff. And he never uttered a word to me. Not a word. And about 6 months in, he said like a sentence to me. And then another 6 months goes by, and then he finally starts talking to me a little bit. And so at the end of my high school career, I asked him finally, I'm like, dude, what was the deal, dude? Like, you never talked to me. And he's like, well, I had to make sure that you were serious because I didn't want to waste all my time. Because I've been here for a long time. I tell this kid to do this and I help this kid. And then 3 weeks later, they're gone. So he's like, I'm done doing that shit. And so you have to earn your spot on the team, basically. And I'll never forget that because when I reiterated this in this day and age, like, what a jerk. You should help everyone. I'm like, no, dude, that's not how this works. Because, even we have kids that come into the, football and they stay there for 6 months and you're working with them, then they just fucking fly. And now it's like, you're going to have to you're going to do body weight squats and push-ups for a couple months, buddy, until we start talking a little bit. That's not exactly how it is, but the bottom line is you have to kind of earn that. There's an old saying, and I assume it's a Chinese proverb because whatever, they always
they always are.
Yeah, they always have something snappy to say. It's the master will appear when the apprentice is ready. And
I love
that. With Darren that was with it. With Dave, I think that was a big thing. And of course, people will say, well, you're very lucky to have Darren and Dave and all these guys. And I said, well, yeah, but how many people has, for example,
how many people have crossed their paths?
Yeah. And nothing happened and they had the same opportunities. And it's, with Darren, he's been teaching for 30 years. I'm just the only person all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Did I go to a school of one?
Yeah. People that say you're lucky are probably the people that are just fucking jealous that it wasn't them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because magically people find opportunities, right? Like the successful. It's just, and I'm not saying some people don't have to work harder for others, or but one of my good friends, Matt Rhodes, he used to drive like an hour and a half to find places to train, and he drove from, I want to say, he may be in Massachusetts to Ohio just to train with Westside for a while. And they didn't know him from a hole in the ground.
Yeah.
No one. And but magically now he's a head strength coach somewhere, and he's did a shitload of writing with Elite, and he's done a shitload with powerlifting and sports stuff. So there you go.
Yeah, it's
magically.
It's that whole thing though, isn't it? Kind of what you're saying about that proverb. It's when you put yourself in enough of those situations and you want it bad enough, and those people can see that you want it. Like I've fucking heard Dave say like 1,000 times now, that he doesn't employ people on their CV. He employs people for what they can fucking do.
Yeah.
It's not about what this bit of paper says. It's like I want to see what you do, and
Yeah.
when that happens, again, the dynamic changes. People can see that you have skin in the game mentally and physically. Like that, when you're speaking to someone about it and they're passionate about it, and you look in their eyes, you can fucking tell, man. You can't cheat that. You can't lie. And if you've got that as well, if you have that hunger, you can see it in other people. Dave has that hunger. Yeah. You have that hunger. All of those guys, all of you old school guys, have that same hunger, which is why and it's why you got to the top of your game, because everyone was so hungry for it that when you start getting 4 or 5 guys in a room that are all hungry for it, some crazy shit is going to happen.
Yeah, and are you familiar? He had just passed, I think, in 2019. Dr. Ken Leisner. Are you familiar with him?
I'm afraid I'm not. No.
He's kind of one of the. You talk about old school. He knew the Weeders when they were just starting.
Holy shit.
He owned, I think he was behind the old Iron Island gym in New York. He's a big time high intensity guy.
Okay.
He drove out from New York, from Long Island, all the way out to the old York, Pennsylvania. That's where the epicenter of Olympic and powerlifting and stuff like that was going on in the this might be the 60s and 70s. I'd have to look this up. But anyway, Dr. Ken just passed. He was 70 some odd years old. And he's just, he had been around for so long. And he was I never forget this. He was so confident in what he did that he was amazingly okay with people doing other things. Okay. And so he was big on doing like 20 rep squats and, working out twice a week, just as hard on every, one hard set a week, whatever. And someone had told him, I was talking to Dr. Ken. I was very fortunate. I'm so fortunate to have some kind of relationship with Dr. Ken. But Dr. Ken's like, someone told me that someone was bad-mouthing me on the internet about, in some forum or something. This was probably 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And he's like, well, show me. And of course the guy's screen name was like, big time squatter 28 or whatever.
And I think it's like awesome. Big dick player or something.
Yeah. And he's looking at it. He goes, well, who is this guy? He's like, I don't know. He's like, then why do I fucking care? And he's like, he doesn't know what we do. And it was like it was such a common sense reaction to something that I think a lot of us get built up on. Like, someone just wrote me some nasty shit on the internet. I'm like, that's not even what I meant by anything, but you know what? Like, I just don't care. I don't even respond. I'm like, what are you going to do? Like, I'm still getting laid tonight. You're not.
Yeah, man. And it's so funny. Like, we get so caught up in just like that nitty little bullshit things that have such a big impact on us. It's mad.
And I think when you're younger, the best way I explain it to people is, with super religious people, the people that really believe in what they believe in, whatever it is, they're so comfortable in what they believe in that they're okay with you believing in whatever else. It's the people that believe X and are so insecure about what they believe that you have to believe it too in order for them to be justified in their opinion. And, it's like one of my best friends is the head. I didn't know him when I started, but he's the head football coach at London. I didn't know him prior to joining up. Well, he's like a super Christian. I mean, brimstone and Bible stuff, and I am not. And he never even says anything to me. I make fun of him. He makes fun of me about it, and but he never preaches anything. He's like, yeah, it's just what I believe, and I think it's true. And I'm like, that's cool. Like, he's like, I know you believe and you think it's true. I'm like, yeah. And one of his greatest things he ever said to me, he's like, I know God has a sense of humor. And I was like, why? He's like, because he sent me you. Of all the people that could help, I got a million weird, not so Christian tattoos on my body. He's like, what are you going to do? Like, but it's the same thing with strength training. Once you get to a point where you really have like a philosophy or principles or whatever you want to say that you believe in, I'm okay with someone believing something else, and I'm okay with someone disagreeing with me. For example, one guy, some kind of bigger name guy, really criticized what I do and all this other stuff. And they asked me a question about it. And I said, well, why don't you ask the teams that we play what they think about us? Because, to put in perspective, we beat the living shit out of people. Like, we never pass the ball. I don't know if you're familiar with football. We just run the same basic plays over and we just beat the crap out of people.
Yeah.
I'm like, if it wouldn't work, then why are we beating the crap? Like, ask them how we do it. So, but anyway. And that's, one of the things as I've gotten older, I see, like, when I started coaching at the high school, I was nervous, not just because, I'm in front of all these kids. It's like, man, I'm really putting this program to the test. I'm putting my coaching expertise to the test. And it was a real, it was nerve wracking because I'm like, man, if we suck, that means I suck,
Yeah.
And, but it worked out. And now it's like when people say stuff, I'm like, what do you, I'm okay with that. And just the same with, I see, people attack Lou all the time. He's like, what do you want me to do? All I do is, have world records. Like,
dude, like that's what I was gonna say is that if everyone was to listen to those people, fucking West Side never would have come about, Elitefts would have never come about, because no matter what, like no matter how successful your training system, there's always gonna be one motherfucker that says that it's shit or it doesn't work for them or they didn't get any results off of it. Yeah, exactly, because there's 1,000 other things that you could be doing.
And I always find that weird. Someone asked me to write an article debunking X or do a video with them. And I said, I'd rather show them how to do Y to help them. I don't need to throw someone under a bus. I'm like, you're not helping anyone, man.
It's that whole, it's easier to tear buildings down than to build everything up. It's that whole concept.
Yeah, and that was when that happened. That was like 10 years ago, and I just had this weird feeling. I'm like, I thought about it for just a little bit, and I was like, man, I'm not doing anything. Like any time I could be spent doing that, I could be spent doing something much more positive. And I'm not saying I don't always follow that because obviously you get emotional about stuff, but there is a certain amount of maturity I think that comes with that. And I saw it all the time with Louis, and we would, as a group, we'd all go to these meets and stuff, and just like, what are you gonna do? Like, everyone's squatting 1,000, like yeah, and
get under that bar and get squatting, baby. Yeah. You ain't got a choice.
Yeah, and but it's the other thing. I'm just going off on a tangent here. I've been asked this question quite a few times in the last, 2 years, really. Like, what do you where do you get some of your information from and all that stuff? And I have spent the last, I'd say, 18 months looking in the past to see what people were doing. And, there we go. Okay, there we go. So I'm trying to look at like what other people have done in the past, with athletes and stuff. Because I think we lose a lot of that stuff with the everyone trying to find the latest and greatest. And so that's been like one of the things, is trying to find all this old information, which is hard to come by because there's not a lot of videos and
dude, no one's got a VHS anymore, dude.
No, and so it's been fun trying to find some of this old stuff. And I was very, when I befriended Dr. Ken, you understand, like, the West Side Barbell in Columbus was the second West Side Barbell. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
The first one was in Culver City with George Friend and Bill Peanuts West. Well, Dr. Ken sent me and all these old articles that the old West Side guys had written or had been interviewed for, and he put them in like a spiral bound book. Like,
oh my god!
And
that's like the Holy Bible of conjugate.
Oh, it's like the ultimate. It's
the sacred text, bro.
Yeah, just flipping through, and some of the ideas you're like,
to handle it.
But those guys were ahead of their time with a lot of the stuff, because like George Friend, who was a tremendous powerlifter, was also a medalist in the hammer throw. So these guys were still athletic and doing some insane lifts. So, but anyway, like, I love reading about that stuff. And there was an old book. You guys, the hack squat, like the hack squat machine.
Yeah.
And then there's actually a hack squat lift. That's where it came from, where you basically deadlift with the bar behind your legs. Do you ever see that?
Oh yeah. I've done that a couple times. Yeah.
Okay, that's named after George Hackenschmidt. He's the one that popularized that, and he wrote a book. And I want to say it was in the 1920s or 1915. Okay. You will laugh your ass off when you read it, because it's like, make sure you do some walking or running a couple times a day. Make sure you're doing resistance training. It was like the most, make sure you work your legs quite a bit, because that's the foundation. Like, all this shit, you're like, nothing's changed much. He's like, have a balanced diet, try not to drink alcohol. And you're like, man, this guy had it all down. Like, this could have been like the first book and the only book I've ever written.
Yeah, but dude, it's so funny that you say that, because it's like it's this whole thing, you know, like everything just comes back around, but it's just like reskinned. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's so funny. Like, I think back to like when CrossFit really boomed, and I sat there and I thought to myself, it's like, dude, people have been training CrossFit for fucking years before anyone chuck a brand on there, and all of a sudden it's a thing. You're like, no, dude.
Well, Jack LaLanne was the ultimate circuit kind of guy, and then, hey babe, can you get me the charger and help me? Hold on one second.
That's cool.
Can you get me the charger for the phone and plug it in for me? There was one of my old strength coaches when I was in college. He worked with the female soccer team, and after they did like their main strength work, they would do a circuit with like jumping rope in between or riding the bike for X. And so when I first saw the workout, I'm like, yeah, that's what, like, it's not a big deal. And then it's like, oh my God, these guys did a brilliant job marketing this stuff. And, I am not a very big fan of CrossFit. For obviously their programming is
horrific,
horrid.
Yeah.
And,
shouldn't be illegal.
Yeah. And, then people will say something like, I got to charge my phone here. So hold on a second. Cool. There we go. Make sure that's charging. And I have been very critical of them. And, people will always say, well, it gets people out and doing this and that, right? Like, that's their excuse. It's like, but my response is, one, they could be doing a lot better. And number two, what was I going to say? For someone that I've spent so much time in my life trying to perfect a lot of this stuff, and having them just kind of shit it down.
It's like painful. It like hits you in there.
And I imagine it's like a guy like Eddie Van Halen, who's a tremendous guitarist, and then some guy just steps up and just starts hitting his guitar. And people are like, man, that's awesome. You're like, dude, he doesn't even know how to play a fucking chord.
He hasn't even picked it up.
I know. It's not even plugged in. Is it better than nothing? Sometimes I don't know. But that's,
what you have to think about though, it's a fantastic resource. And like, I've spoken to, I think it's like 3 or 4 international world standard strong men and women competitors. Yeah. And where have they all come from? CrossFit. Because they try it, they realize that half of it fucking sucks, which is usually the cardio. Yep. They fucking love the weightlifting. They usually get broken or fed up with it, and then they come across. So, like, it's that whole thing of, like, everything has its place. Like, as much as we want to poo-poo on CrossFit, it's, like, it's that kind of, like, necessary evil that has to be there for everyone to go through the ringer to be like, hey, welcome to powerlifting. We've got 3 fucking movements here, baby.
Well, it's like marijuana. It's the gateway drug.
Yeah.
Come over here and try meth, my friend. It's way better.
Dip your toe in the meth pool.
Yeah, the problem, like when I personally work with our athletes, and this was like a big bridge I had to get over with the coaches, was our workouts are challenging and all that stuff, but they're never like we don't seek fatigue.
Yeah, because what's the point?
Yeah, because then, like, for example, and I've done this, I fucked up, we try something a little new, and we'll do something on Monday, and it's so goddamn hard, and that's my fault, and I apologize to the kids. I am straight up front. Though now Wednesday's workout's screwed, and then they're only good until we go to Friday.
Yeah.
But we've noticed if we just kind of, I call it, we're just going to mail it in, boys. We're just going to have a good workout today. And then magically they string together 6 weeks of good workouts, and they're like, man, I feel great. I'm like, that's how you're supposed to feel. You're not supposed to feel horrible. Now, granted, kids are also going to get sore. It's not going to be just like one set of bench press. But I've told the coaches and the kids, I said, if our kids could be in great shape and strong, and they do 3 sets of 3 at 135 on the squat, bench, press, and deadlift, and that's all we had to do, that's all I would do. So, but my big rallying cry with the kids is no one runs less than we do, because we don't run a lot. We run enough, and I'm sure you saw this in rugby, like the amount of running people do is so astronomical compared to what they actually do on the field. And of course they're like, well, it breeds mental toughness. And I said, in this day and age, it doesn't work like that. It may have worked 40 years ago. You had a different attitude and kids were more physically prepared. But in this day and age, kids have to feel success. And so one of the things I set, and I've asked, I went to a conference one time and I asked 3 NFL strength coaches and 3 high-end Division I football strength coaches. I asked them, compared to 20 years ago, what's your running volume like? And all of them like, dude, it's like a quarter. Like, yeah. And it's like, it's just people aren't, they don't have the physical background that the kids had. But anyway, to make a long story short, like I don't know how they do rugby practices, but I'm going to assume it's very much like American football, where you guys would go practice and at the end you go run sprints, right?
Yeah. Depending upon how much the coaches fucking hated us that day.
Yeah, right. So we did that. My first year, I didn't really have control of any of this, and then every year after that, I'm like, we're cutting that all out. No conditioning. We're done, because the kids are out there for 2.5 hours playing, practicing. And, of course, everyone's like, what are you doing? I'm like, we're done. Like, the kids are running around. They're fine. So we make a deal with them. They say, you play great on Friday, then you're fine. You get, you pass the test. And the way that I sold this to the coaches, what I said, if we all had a bench press contest on Friday, that's when we play high school football games, is Friday. Would you want to bench Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday as heavy and as hard as possible and expect to do well on Friday? And like, no, that's stupid. I'm like, aha. Right? And so, but anyway, to make it, to simplify it, we really started looking at like the common sense aspect of it. Like, the kids are out practice for 2 hours running around. Why do you need to be doing any more? That's a lot of work. But anyway, it's interesting because when I was in where did we went to the Bahamas? I don't know. Maybe we went to the Bahamas or something. I can't remember. It was somewhere out of the country, and there was rugby playing. And I don't really watch rugby, and I was fascinated because the difference of tackling is insane. Because in American football, you just put your head down
and
run
into people.
Yeah, and it's dangerous, man. I love it, but it's like, holy shit, dude.
I can appreciate.
And I was surprised how the majority of the in the NFL and stuff, the linemen look a certain way.
Yeah.
And the everyone has. So if you're 5'9", 160, you're not going to play line.
Yeah.
And in rugby, it's like everyone was like the same basic, for the most part. I mean,
well, you got rugby league and rugby union. Like rugby league, literally everyone. It's like fucking someone just hit copy and paste on like 50 people. It's ridiculous. Union's a little bit different, but I mean,
yeah, you're always going to have the outliers on either side. Like there was one dude who was like 280. He was Samoan, of course, because God forbid a Samoan weigh under 300 pounds and not want to take off your fucking head. We had a bunch of Samoans on when I played at University of Arizona on our team. It's Jesus, they're so fucking big,
just insane. And, like 75 pounds a leg, but they can run like sub 540 meter dash, and you're like. Wait, what the fuck? How did you get all of that out of them? Like, it's so crazy.
They got those ridiculous, massive leg tattoos, that were done with like the chisel.
Yeah, and like they were done when they were like 10 years old, and you're like, oh man, like I don't even want to go near you. Yeah, the amount of times I stepped onto a pitch and I'd see like a big islander, and I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be a fucking long day. Just like, I know if he runs in my channel, then I can't get out of it. I just gotta take him to the floor and hope it goes well for me.
But it was awesome watch just from a strength coach perspective. The running is a lot different than, not a lot different, but it was fascinating watching rugby. And I went over to Ireland probably 15, 12 years ago for a seminar. And obviously, rugby was the biggest sport there.
Yeah.
And that's what I was told anyway. And it was such a weird thing because in America, you have basketball, NBA, you have like it literally rules the world here. Like, if LeBron James or Michael Jordan says something, it was like, what? Hold on.
Yeah.
And over there, it's like, hey, what are you gonna do? Like the Cowboys lost. Like, what do you? Here it's like, oh my God, what? And, but it would be awesome to go to a country and kind of rework their strength and conditioning program for the rugby and to see. I'm not saying maybe somewhere where they don't have that and see what you can get out of it. I think it would just be fascinating to do that. So I don't know. I love it. I love the violence of sports like that. There's just something about it. I don't know.
Yeah, and again, it's really interesting because it's kind of going back to that. It's the whole kind of like that cathartic release, in the gym and being on the field. As I mean, I don't play anymore. I stopped about 18, 19, but post injury. And it was like, man, when you don't have that, it's like there is a void in your life. Yep. And and I thought, I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay. And it was like 3-6 months go past. I'm like, oh, I'm okay. And it's like, okay, 9 months go past. I'm like, man, I'm getting a little bit itchy now. And it's like a year goes past. I'm like, man, I could just put my fist through a fucking drywall for no reason right now. And it's like, no, like you don't understand, especially if you've done it from a young age. Like you need to have that. It becomes a necessity, or you kind of lose yourself.
It's my wife always likes to say when people start getting upset about the UFC and all that stuff, her thing is like, I'm glad those people have somewhere to go. I don't want Chuck Liddell walking around.
God, can you imagine just taking people's head offs in bars, just like walking down the main street?
Yeah, I'm like, those people, and it's funny because those people are bred differently, and I always tell the kids, the UFC is the only job in the world where you're 100% gonna get punched in the head in your job. Like, and right? I mean, it's insane.
Yeah.
And those kids, when I address them on the Friday right before the game, I get together and I talk to them about stuff. And one of the things is like, you guys are doing something that most of these people in the audience will never do, and that's when you're playing in front of a large group and the people get upset with you, or you can be cheered and stuff. It's nerve-wracking, and I'm sure you know that. Where the attitudes of a community rest on, and people say, well, that's a large burden to put on kids. I'm like, it's an awesome burden. Like, they start to learn how to work with pressure and understand the realities of failing and succeeding. And it's, it's like, hey, all that work I put in, look at this. Like, there's a result. And
in that moment, you also have to be so fucking vulnerable as well. Like, that's another thing, like, people don't understand and people don't respect it, is that, if you're turning up to play, that person could have literally started playing. Like, I started playing rugby when I was 6 years old. By the time I'm 18, like, I've put in the vast majority of my life into the sport. When I step out onto that field, that's my whole life is represented in that moment. Yeah. And it's like, if you then have a bad game or whatever, it's like, dude, that, like, people don't understand how badly that cuts you as an athlete, because it's like, no, this is everything. This is every single time I fucking threw up after that hell training session. Every single time I woke up and I could barely walk because my legs were so jacked up from that strength session. Like, every single one of those moments goes into every single game. Like, and I don't think people that haven't been there and kind of been taken through that ringer, they'll never understand that.
Well, it's, they always tell you, well, it's only a game. And then I referenced the point that when LeBron James signed with Cleveland Cavaliers, he came back to Cleveland. You should understand, LeBron is from that area.
Yeah.
The boon to the economy almost immediately was like estimated in the billions, like, or something like that. It was so crazy. And there is a famous football player in Texas named Johnny Manziel, very polarizing figure. So, he acted kind of like an egotistical jerk, and then he was just a tremendous player. And some economic, and he got a lot of shit because he wasn't going to class and all this other stuff. And people were saying, well, he gets treated differently. And some guys sat, one of the economists in that school sat down and said, well, how much money does this kid bring to this community? And I think one year was like $550 million.
Holy
and it's like, you know why he's treated differently?
Yeah. You're like, here's your numbers.
Right.
Big fat zero. And you're like, and that's why you have this job. So shut the fuck up and get your pen out.
So when they say it's only a game, I understand. As if you just showed up on Friday, hit a couple stretches, did a couple windmills, and like, let's see what happens.
Good to go. Let's see. Yeah.
That's right.
Hope we come out of this one with a W, guys.
That's right. Hey, what's your name again? I don't know who you are.
So the guy in the black and white, he's the ref, yeah? Okay. And we're going that way. I'm good.
Does he call? Who calls the plays?
Yeah. Has anyone got a spare set of boots? I left mine in the car. It's really, really interesting. I love to finish the podcast up in a particular way, and I'm super interested to hear what you have to say, because I know you've been through a lot, and I know that it definitely does kind of change you, and it changes the way that you think about things. So the question is this: I want for a second for you to imagine that you're going back in time. You're stepping into a time machine, you're going back in time, and you're going to visit your younger self, 10, 11, 12 years of age. The rest of your life is ahead of you. There's a lot of shit to come that you have now been through. You've come out the other side. You get to spend a few moments with your younger self, and you get to kind of reiterate a few words of wisdom, a bit of knowledge, a mantra to live by. What information, what do you impart onto your younger self to help you to weather the storm of everything that is about to happen to you?
I would probably say three things to myself. One, just relax. I don't suffer from anxiety or anything like that. But I was so terrified of being average, or I'm terrified of not reaching my goals. And it probably worked out in my favor, because it got to the point where I was just feverishly training and whatever. And I would just tell myself, just relax, because it's going to be okay. Even when I was in college, it was just like a bundle of nerves. Now, I probably didn't show it all the time, because I just, but number two would be my dad preached this to me from a very young age, because he was a teacher and a coach. So he was around a lot of assholes and stuff. And number two is never follow the crowd, ever. And I took that my dad told it to me, and then I went off this way.
Yeah, of course.
And I was like, well, you could have followed a couple of us. Jesus. But that was something I would make sure, because, and I tell the kids in the high school this too. I said, the chances of you talking to any of these other kids in high school after 5 years is pretty much zero. So don't let them influence anything you do. And number three is always follow your heart and your gut. Every time I've gone away from that, I've made the wrong decision. And every time I followed it, I've made the right decision. Now, of course, not every time, but the majority of the time.
Yeah.
So I think those three things, I'll give you an example. Is someone asked me a kind of a similar question. If you can go back in time with training, what would you do? And of course, they asked, I don't know, 5 or 8 guys or something. It was in an article for T Nation. And I was the last one they put, and I said I'd change nothing. And part of me said that because, one, I had a great mentor who's like, hey, you should squat, bench, deadlift, do a shitload of running hills and do jumps. This was before any of this stuff was. I was like, well, that's what we do.
Yeah.
Luckily I didn't have the internet to ruin me, And even with all the mistakes I've made, I still I had two big goals and I got both of them done. And I'm like, man, how many people can say that? Like, I've worked so hard to get X and worked so hard to get Y. And so like with training stuff, I wouldn't change anything, but I wish I could have. I guess the other thing I tell myself is enjoy the time. Everywhere I was in my life, I was so focused on the next goal.
Yeah.
That it's not all the time, but you kind of lose that. It wasn't like I didn't
get so
operate.
caught up in it that you kind of you miss it all, right?
Yeah, and that's something that only really. If I came back and told myself, I'm like, yeah, you're fucking.
You wouldn't fucking listen to yourself.
Yeah,
you would never listen to yourself.
Which is a good thing too, because at the same time, again, I got to do everything I wanted to do. I got to live my dream. When I was 19, I wrote down on a piece of paper like 3 things I really wanted to do, just not in training or football, but in life. And I got all of them, and it's better than I ever thought. So I was very, very fortunate. Now, along the way, it was horrible, but I kept those 3 things down. I remember I was in my very first apartment. It was like 400 square feet, it's tiny.
But if it was easy, man, you wouldn't appreciate it.
No. And, my dad asked me one time, I don't know how, when I went to play college football, I didn't have a scholarship. I just went to the school and I tried out for the team and I made it. And it's fucking horrible because they treat you like crap. And eventually I earned a... Yeah. And they only let maybe 5 of you on at a time or something like that. And the rest of the kids have been recruited and everyone loves them. And I eventually earned a scholarship. And those 3 years prior to earning a scholarship were the most trying times of my life, because like, how you said you love rugby, that's how it was for me, except I had success in high school. I was very good in high school. Then you go to a big time college or university and there's all Americans all around you. And I wasn't even close to them. And my dad asked me, he's like, you think you could still go do that? And I'm like, there's no fucking way. Like, you have to be in a headspace of like, it's funny because people talk about failing. Like, your fucking life is a failure for 3 years. It's just, you run 5 steps and you just get fucking punched. You're like, fuck it, run. And so it's always about, getting up. Like, it's a guy who gets up, knocks down 7 times and gets up 8. And then you have to go knock the fucking dude out that knocked you down 7 times. So that kind of, I think that I miss a little bit of having that kind of insanity. And I'm kind of glad it's gone though too, because it's a hard way to live.
And I don't think that there is a more Jim Wendler way to end a fucking podcast than that statement that just came out of your mouth. That is absolutely beautiful, man. That has been awesome. Thank you so much for doing this, dude. I can sit here and honestly, I can listen to you for like fucking hours. I'm like, it's coming up to like nearly 10 o'clock in the UK here.
Okay.
I'm like, okay.
Okay.
But dude, I can sit here till like 1 a.m. That's the thing. It's like, I love it. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, man. I'm sure we'll do it again sometime. Thank you so much for doing this, dude.
Anytime. And thank you very much for your for letting me have this opportunity. Okay, Matt?
It's been amazing.